In the early 19th century, Europe is a continent in chaos, teetering on the edge of upheaval. The French Revolution has shattered the old feudal order, leaving nations fractured and ambitions unleashed. From this turmoil rises a figure who will reshape the world. Napoleon Bonaparte, a Corsican artillery officer whose meteoric ascent begins at age 30 when he seizes control of a fractured France. His vision is audacious, to end the bloody revolution and elevate France to imperial glory. Napoleon's brilliance on the battlefield, coupled with an unyielding sense of destiny, makes him a force unlike any other. By 1801, he crushes Austrian armies in Italy, forcing a reluctant peace on the Holy Roman Emperor. Across the English Channel, Britain, with its unmatched Royal Navy, eyes Napoleon's France warily. A tense stalemate emerges, a fragile balance between Europe's greatest powers, one destined to collapse. Caught in this storm is Denmark-Norway, a small but strategic kingdom under King Christian VII, with Crown Prince Frederick governing as regent due to the king's frail health. Denmark-Norway clings to neutrality, a calculated choice to protect its vast merchant fleet, one of Europe's largest, and preserve its lucrative trade routes. Neutrality, however, becomes a tightrope as the Napoleonic Wars intensify. Britain, dominant at sea, fears the Danish fleet could fall into French hands, threatening its naval supremacy. For Napoleon, Denmark-Norway's strategic position offers a potential foothold in the north. Both powers pressure the kingdom, leaving Crown Prince Frederick in an impossible position. In 1801, Britain strikes first with the Battle of Copenhagen. Admiral Horatio Nelson leads a ferocious naval assault, bombarding the city and crippling the Danish fleet. The attack, a ruthless display of British power, forces Denmark-Norway into a defensive crouch. Humiliated, the kingdom joins the Armed Neutrality League alongside Russia, Prussia, and Sweden to protect neutral shipping from British interference. This alliance, however, only escalates tensions. Britain, unwilling to tolerate any threat, to its dominance launches a second, even more devastating assault in 1807, the Second Battle of Copenhagen. Under Admiral James Gambier and General Lord Cathcart, British forces besiege the city for 4 days, unleashing a relentless barrage that sets Copenhagen ablaze. Civilians perish, historic buildings crumble, and Denmark-Norway, unprepared for such force, surrenders its fleet to the British. The loss is a crushing blow. Enraged and cornered, Crown Prince Frederick abandons neutrality and aligns with Napoleon in 1808, thrusting Denmark-Norway into the Napoleonic Wars on France's side. This alliance proves disastrous. The British naval blockade strangles the kingdom's economy, cutting off trade and plunging the population into hunger and poverty. Danish-Norwegian troops deployed in northern Germany face brutal campaigns against Swedish and Russian forces, suffering heavy losses with little gain. The kingdom's merchant fleet, once a source of pride, becomes a target, and its economy buckles under the weight of war. Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Leipzig in 1813 marks the beginning of the end for his empire. Denmark-Norway, still tied to France, is left exposed as the coalition of Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Sweden tightens its grip. Sweden, led by Crown Prince Charles John, a former French marshal under Napoleon, now heir to the Swedish throne, seizes the moment to pursue its ambition of uniting Scandinavia. In 1814, Swedish forces invade Norway, aiming to annex it. Crown Prince Frederick, with a depleted army, cannot resist. On January 14, 1814, the Treaty of Kiel is signed, forcing Denmark to cede Norway to Sweden, ending a 450-year union. But Norway's story does not end in submission. A spark of defiance ignites, led by Prince Christian Frederick, the former viceroy of Norway and nephew of the Danish king. Charismatic and deeply connected to the Norwegian people, Christian Frederick refuses to accept Swedish rule. In spring 1814, he convenes a national assembly at Eidsvoll, where 112 representatives draft a constitution. On May 17, 1814, the Constitution of Norway is signed, establishing the Storting, a parliament to embody the people's desire for self-governance. Christian Frederick is elected king, a bold declaration of independence. This dream, however, faces a formidable adversary in Charles John, now Crown Prince of Sweden. A master strategist, Charles John prepares for war, but also seeks to avoid bloodshed by promising to respect Norway's constitution. By November 1814, after tense negotiations, Christian Frederick steps aside, and Norway enters a personal union with Sweden, retaining its Storting but under the Swedish monarch. The union is bittersweet, burdened by Norway's staggering debt, from its time with Denmark and an economy ravaged by years of blockades and war. To stabilize its finances, Norway establishes Norges Bank in 1816, the nation's first central bank. The task of leading it falls to Jacob Frederick Oxholm, a merchant from Trondheim with a knack for trade and manufacturing. Oxholm faces a monumental challenge. Norway's economy is bleeding from war debts and infrastructure costs, and its timber exports alone cannot sustain it. Salvation comes from an unlikely source, Berlin's Benecke brothers, shrewd financiers who extend a costly loan to Norges Bank. The high-interest deal, while burdensome, provides a lifeline, allowing Norway to stabilize its currency and rebuild. By the mid-19th century, Norway's economy begins to recover. Timber exports boom, sawmills hum, and the shipping industry thrives as Norwegian merchants gain prominence in European ports. Fishing, particularly cod and herring, becomes a cornerstone of trade. By the 1890s, Norway emerges as a confident player on the European stage, its economy bolstered by growing industries and a burgeoning sense of national pride. Yet the union with Sweden remains a source of tension as the Storting gains power and nationalist fervor simmers. This progress is tested in 1899 when the Christiania crash, Norway's worst financial collapse, devastates the economy. Fueled by speculative investments in real estate and new enterprises, the bubble bursts, toppling banks and bankrupting businesses. The crash mirrors cycles of boom and bust seen across history, from the Dutch tulip mania to later global crises. Christiania's bustling streets fall silent, but the crisis sparks political transformation. The Norwegian Labour Party, evolving from radical socialism to pragmatic reform, gains traction under leaders like Johan Nygaardsvold, who champion workers' rights and social welfare. The crash also fuels demands for independence. Christian Michelsen, a shipowner turned politician, emerges as a champion of Norwegian sovereignty. By 1905, tensions with Sweden reach a breaking point. On June 7th, Michelsen, now Prime Minister, leads Norway in unilaterally dissolving the Union, a daring move that risks war. King Oscar II of Sweden hesitates, recognizing the Norwegian people's resolve. After months of negotiations, Sweden agrees to a peaceful dissolution in autumn 1905. Norway is reborn as a fully independent nation, with Prince Karl of Denmark crowned King Haakon VII, symbolizing a new era. Independence, however, is soon tested by the Great War. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 plunges Europe into World War I, a conflict that consumes millions of lives. Norway declares neutrality, but its vast merchant fleet becomes a target in the battle for control of the seas. German U-boats sink Norwegian ships, while British blockades disrupt trade, causing food shortages and soaring prices. Prime Minister Gunnar Knudsen navigates this crisis, balancing neutrality with economic survival. King Haakon VII, beloved by the people, works tirelessly to maintain diplomatic ties, but over 2,000 Norwegian sailors perish, and the economy strains under the war's weight. The war's end in 1918 brings relief but no respite. Post-war inflation and economic turmoil hit Norway hard, prompting the rise of Nicolai Rygg, governor of Norges Bank from 1920. A disciplined economist, Rygg pegs the Norwegian krone to the gold standard in 1928 to restore stability. The move triggers deflation and unemployment, closing factories and sparking protests. The global financial crisis of 1929, triggered by the Wall Street crash, worsens the situation. Norway's export markets for fish and timber collapse, and small towns face ruin. Rygg faces immense pressure, but Nygaardsvold's Labour government introduces reforms, building infrastructure and a social safety net to cushion the blow. As Norway grapples with the Great Depression Germany descends into despair, paving the way for Adolf Hitler's rise. By the mid-1930s, Hitler's militarization alarms Europe, and Norway's strategic ports draw attention. Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, urges Britain to mine Norwegian waters to disrupt Germany's iron ore supply, but diplomatic caution delays action. The 1940 Altmark affair, where British forces violate Norwegian neutrality to rescue prisoners from a German tanker, provokes Hitler. On April 9, 1940, Germany launches Operation Weserübung, invading Norway and Denmark. The invasion is swift and brutal. Despite a heroic defense at Oscarsborg Fortress, which sinks the German cruiser Blücher, Norway's underprepared military is overwhelmed. King Haakon VII and the government flee to Britain, while Nicolai Rygg orchestrates a daring evacuation of Norway's 50-ton gold reserve. In a race against time, the gold is moved from Oslo to Lillehammer, then north by train, fishing boats, and British warships reaching London safely. This victory denies Germany a critical resource. The German occupation, led by the traitorous Vidkun Quisling, is merciless. Norway's economy is plundered, its currency devalued, and resources redirected to the Nazi war machine. Inflation soars, and shortages plague the population. Resistance grows, but liberation comes only on May 8, 1945, when Germany surrenders. King Haakon VII returns to a jubilant Norway, ready to rebuild. The Marshall Plan, providing $400 million from the United States, jumpstarts recovery. Norway industrializes, modernizing shipbuilding and fishing while expanding its welfare state. The discovery of the Ekofisk oil field in 1969 transforms the nation. Under Minister of Industry Sverre Walter Rostoft, Norway asserts control over its oil wealth, establishing the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate and Statoil, now Equinor. The Government Pension Fund Global, created in 1990, secures oil revenues, growing into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. The 2008 global financial crisis tests Norway's resilience, but its oil fund and prudent banking system cushion the blow. Stimulus measures and infrastructure investments ensure a swift recovery. By the 21st century, Norway stands as a beacon of prosperity, with high GDP per capita, robust social welfare, and global admiration for its governance. Its decision to remain outside the European Union preserves economic sovereignty, while its homogeneous culture fosters social cohesion. From the Napoleonic Wars to oil wealth, Norway's journey is one of resilience, strategic foresight, and an unwavering commitment to its people